We're halfway through the Formula One season, and what a season it's been. Completely defied expectations, and in recent races, spectacular battles. But the one thing that's been really surprising is the form of Ferrari. We talked pre-season about how they look like favourites after testing, but they've yet to win a race. So it's been a really difficult season for the Ferrari team. So I'm joined by Gary Anderson to discuss, I guess, how much we were wrong about their form pre-season and how much Ferrari have been the architects of their own downfall. So how do you explain this, Gary? Did we just get it totally wrong, or were Ferrari in a good position and let it slip? What exactly has happened?
Well, I think on face value, I mean, we obviously did get it wrong. The car looked very good in Spain. I've spent a lot of time out on the track. Slow corners, fast corners, always seemed to be able to have a decent balance. Didn't matter what tyre was on the car, both drivers, every time they were out there, they were doing quick lap times. So they were either cheating themselves, which is fuel load, which we aren't privy to. And if they're doing that, it's a pretty stupid situation for a team that's going into a season to challenge for a championship. You need to be honest with yourself. And the interesting thing for me is going, in Spain, in testing, the car looked very good. But you go to the race weekend itself, and they were actually, 1.1% slower than Mercedes. That's a lifetime. That's actually one of their worst races. And that was the track where they looked as though they were dominating before the season started. So I think they come away as confused as anybody, to be honest, as to what really happened. Now, Mercedes, we know, did quite a lot of developments for the first race. They changed the car quite a lot, and they changed the sort of concept of how the front wing worked a fair amount. So they moved forward quite a lot, and Ferrari didn't do anything. But that doesn't mean that Ferrari should have been as bad as they have been during the season. Now, saying that, they've had a few pole positions. They should have won a few races, but they've been a bit of a disaster, to be honest. They've just seemed to trip up over themselves. The drivers and the team, no matter what's happening, when they have a good opportunity for one reason or another, and they just turn themselves into a shambles, basically.
But the amazing thing is, as you say, there have been occasions they could have won. Bahrain, they definitely should have won. They had control of the race. Leclerc had a problem. Vettel had a spin while battling with Hamilton. Baku, they were quick, but then as the temperatures dropped in qualifying, they fell away, and Leclerc had his crash in Q2. Austria, Leclerc led for a period until very late on and could have won there. Germany, they were quick and they had problems in qualifying, and that meant they were effectively out of contention. Leclerc crashed again. Canada, Vettel, won on the road, didn't he? So if you're being very, very generous, you could say they could have as many as 5 wins, but they should be sitting on at least 2 or 3 wins now. The reasons for these wins not happening are all over the map. There's some engine problems, some car problems, some driver errors. So when, as you as a technical leader, you look at the reasons behind it, can you just say, well, it's all different reasons, so it's just things that happen? Or does it point to some wider systemic weakness that needs to be really tackled?
Yeah, it needs to be really tackled, because that is a big problem whenever it's all different problems, be it mechanical or driver errors. But at the end of the day, the management and the structure of the team should be pulling it together to pull in one direction. Saying that they could have won 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 Grand Prix is true, but that's an if. You've got to go and do it. The points on the table are the points on the table at the minute. Really, it's a disaster for Ferrari. They're not as competitive relative to Mercedes as they were last year, on average over the season so far. They've dropped off a little bit, and that's not the intention. And now they've also got Red Bull in there firing at them. Red Bull, the Honda Red Bull package with Max Verstappen in it it's astounding, really, the development they've done through the year and the steps they've made. And Ferrari need to watch out for that now, because suddenly they're not going to just be second best to Mercedes. It could be very easily third best.
How much do you think is down to Mattia Binotto? He became team principal this year, and I don't necessarily mean purely from the fact of him being a bad team principal, but remember you writing at the start of the season that you didn't think the decision was right, because here was this great technical director who's been moved across to be team principal, and that has to weaken the team. Obviously, you were a technical director for many years. Didn't ever see you becoming a team principal. So do you think that maybe he's looking in too many directions and they've weakened the technical side, even if he has gone in as team principal and done a good job in that role?
Well, the big thing that everybody says about him is that he's very good at motivating people, and that's very important. But the motivation is the technical side. The whole thing is about racing. The team principal is responsible for making sure that all the departments, all the compartments that make up a Formula One team are all pulling in the right direction. The technical group is one of those, but the technical group has to work to produce that product. And Mattia was, as far as I know, was one of the good guys. He first of all sort of brought the engine to life whenever it was a bit of a dead dog in 2014. He got involved with the chassis and seemed to bring that to life as a whole different sort of concept. Now, he's not done it. It's the people that he's worked with. So he's been seeing the architecture of that group of people and been making sure that they were pulling in the right direction and pulling together. And once you take that away and give him the job of going to sit with, Liberty Media in an office in London or something and discuss whether you're going to have 22 races or 21 races, that's wasted, that's gone. And okay, he's still got his people there, but what he was good at, he cannot put 100% of his effort into now. He's got to divide himself in 2 or 3 pieces, and you can't do that. I would never have ever taken on that job. And I said it at the time, and I'll say it again, it's not his fault. It's the people above him that are stupid enough to offer him that job or to request him to do that job, which is more like what happened. And he took it on because he was asked to. It's their problem, but he's the one who's going to suffer in the long term, I'm sure.
Looking to the car, they've admitted that their problem is a lack of downforce. Specifically, it's a lack of front load in particular. There's a little bit of talk about the concept with being a little bit too much focus on efficiency. Yeah. Now, at the start of the season again, when their front wing concept came out with the front wing dropping away a bit towards the outboard end, again you said, well, that makes sense, but is there going to be a weakness there in terms of generating the load? And that does seem to have been proved to be the case. So how do you see the wider question of the car concept? Have they gone wrong with it?
Well, as I said at the time, beginning of the year, I don't see how you can produce front load whenever the wing doesn't exist. I mean, it's there in theory, all the sections are there because the way the regulations are written, you have to have the sections running through to the end plate. But they sweep them down more than anybody else. And whereas Mercedes don't, Red Bull don't. There's a compromise between, if you look through the whole grid that goes from the Ferrari, Alfa Romeo concept right through to probably the Red Bull, which is the most brutal. But there is sort of a different philosophy on how you get the airflow out through and out around the outside of the front tyres. For a few years it was all this outwash with the front wing end plates. That was what was done away with. So Ferrari still carried that route to get as good an outwash around the front tyres as possible. But the thing I think that they've missed on it, and again, what I'd like to say is that I don't think any team knows 100% of what makes the car go quick. Otherwise, you would just never do anything wrong. You'd just be always the best. So there's a risk level. There's something that they've done wrong in the car. Everything they've done right, they know. But there's something they've done wrong in the car they don't know. That's the problem, really. And you've got to increase your depth of research to try to find that thing that you've done wrong. Now, they can very simply say, yes, okay, it's efficiency. We built the car too efficient. But I think from helicopter shots in Hungary, through the last corner on a couple of occasions, I think you could see the Ferrari, the front end just washing out the odd time. It would step across the road a bit, just give up, basically. And that's something that spooks the driver. That's something you don't want to be happening. For me, the Mercedes is very good in low-speed corners. And low-speed corners is defined because you put more steering rod in the car. And the front wheels, when they turn, they open up more of that outboard part of the wing. That is more aggressive, much more aggressive on the Mercedes. We know the Mercedes is pretty good in low-speed corners. And we know that the Ferrari isn't so good in low-speed corners. So they need to look at that area very carefully because there's a way to play tunes with the front wing with steering lock, which means you get a decent balance change from high-speed corners to low-speed corners just because you put more steering lock in the car. And it's an area where I'd be pushing pretty hard if I was at Ferrari to dig deep into.
So what would represent, to your mind, a good second half of the season?
The thing I would be looking at is with Ferrari is to make sure that they research deeper because they've got a problem. You don't build a car with an inherent problem in it, and you're only relative to your competition. So Ferrari at the situation right now, they are slower than Mercedes on average. Most tracks, and Red Bull are biting at their heels, if not ahead of them now. So Ferrari need to sort of look at that and see where their problems lie. And if it is in the low speed corners, which I think they would agree that that's one of the areas, they need to find a way of making the car so the front end works better in low speed corners. Everybody plays around with this front suspension that lowers the front of the car with steering lock. That's only to gain front downforce, front load in low speed corners, because these cars inherently understeer. I'd be pushing to understand that, spend more time in the wind tunnel looking at steering angle, because you really can't do it in CFD. I could go to Spa with what I've got and be pretty decent. So you're not against the wall right now, but you get yourself to Monza, and it's going to be a high-speed track, so it's going to be all about efficiency and trimming the car. You know, there is low-speed corners at Monza, but the reality of it is the high-speed straights will make up for a lot of that. So those two races, Ferrari could do a reasonable job with what they've got, knowing that they've got to then get their developments in place for the races after that. Because if they don't, they're going to get thrashed in the second half of the season.